Hi, everyone. This is Sam Silverman, Managing Partner of EB5AN. Thank you for taking time for today's webinar. Today, we're going to be discussing some recent changes to USCIS forms, cancellation of the postmark rule, what is that, and how does that impact investors? And then we'll also be spending some time on the two forms that were recently updated, Form I-485 and Form-131 as well. All right, so to start, a little bit about EB5AN. We're a leading EB5 investment fund manager. We work with investors from around the world. We've been in this space for about 11 years at this point. Our regional centers cover the entire country, which allows us to pick projects all over the United States without any focus on a particular geographic area. One of the things that sets us apart from many of the other EB5 companies is a focus on investment transparency. And so unlike many of the other EB5 companies, we make available all financial statements and all project documents to potential investors who are considering making an investment in any of our projects. Another thing to consider as well is information. We have one of the most active YouTube channels with over 1,000 videos and hundreds of blog posts about topics ranging from how to pick an EB5 immigration attorney to how to do to how to evaluate and conduct diligence on potential EB5 projects. So definitely check out those free resources available on our site. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm Sam Silverman, one of the two managing partners here on the left-hand side. And you can get a little more information about my background and bio there on the screen. And this is a map showing where many of our regional centers are located and have coverage all over the United States, and another map showing where many of our prior investors have come from. And also many of our projects and articles have been featured in some of the leading publications. Some of those are listed here. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our guest panelists for today's webinar, immigration attorney Anita George. And I'll let Anita jump in and share a little bit more about her background and EB5 experience, and then we'll jump into some of these recent USCIS developments and changes that are really urgent and important for investors considering EB5 or in the process of filing to really understand, and we'll go through those details as well.
All right, thanks, Sam. Thanks for having me on today for this important topic. My name's Anita George. I'm a partner at George & Marziello, founding partner. We're a firm based out of Seattle, Washington, and we specialize in EB5 investment visa. We've done north of 4,000 at this point EB5 applications. We have a 100% approval rate. For background, I have my degrees in law and accounting, so I was a forensic accountant by profession for 5 years before I began the EB5 practice. A lot of EB5 work revolves around sourcing money, mapping out your funds. All the lawyers at our firm have a background in tax, finance, and audit, which makes us, one of the top-notch attorneys in the industry. And as of today, I think we're filing 7 to 8 EB5 petitions a week, so we're a very high-volume EB5 firm.
Perfect. All right, so let's jump into the main topics for today. So let's first spend a few minutes on the postmark rule. What is the postmark rule? What's changed, and why does that matter for investors who are in the process of filing or who might, file, let's say, over the next 30 to 60 days?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. So in 2023, USCIS came out with guidelines, the postmark guidelines. According to those guidelines, whatever date was printed on your shipping label, say I send an application to FedEx today, the shipping cutoff for FedEx is 3 p.m. But if I sent it today, the label print date would be March 5th, and it would get there, say, on March 7th. USCIS would then consider March 3rd or March 5th, that is today's date, as the date to verify the version of the form. The postmark rule basically said that if your application was in transit or in process or with the shipper, you got the benefit of the doubt. You could use a previous version of the form if the rules had changed. This rule was archived 48 hours ago. We are not sure if it applies or not. As you can see there, the notice says the archive contains outdated information that may not reflect current policy or programs. The fact that this was taken down is an indication that that postmark rule may not be able to save us if we ship an application today, say it gets there in 2 days, and while it's in air, the form version changes. We have no idea how that plays out. We're about to find out, but I think it's very important to stay on top of things and understand that that savior rule that was in place is kind of gone. And there was no notice before it was revoked, no information provided. We are going to find out as weeks go by how the contractors at USCIS are interpreting these rules, whether the postmark rule is still in play or it's completely gone. It is a concern for UB5 investors. Let's start with investors first. When we ship out these applications, they get to USCIS. USCIS is then in charge of scanning all the applications into the system. It takes them about 2 to 3 weeks to scan these applications. Once they're scanned, they either process it or they don't process it and reject it. Some of the reasons for rejection are incorrect payee information. Sometimes, we've seen clients write checks payable to USCIS instead of US Department of Homeland Security, or incorrect amount paid. So instead of $11,160 and $1,000 check, you write a $13,000 check. The file will come back. Or you filed an incorrect version of the form. What does that mean? USCIS changes versions for forms regularly. When they do change the version, they tend to give a grace period. They'll say, hey, up until this point, we will accept the form. After this date, you have to file the new form. If the version is incorrect, the government tends to kick back the file to the immigration attorneys. The kicking back of the file happens through USPS, which then would take another 3 weeks to be returned to your attorney. So all in all, you'd be losing 6 to 8 weeks while the government is processing the packet, rejecting the packet, and kicking it back through USPS. It just isn't as easy as, hey, let's print another one and ship another one, because now these boxes, these source of funds packets have your photographs, they have your checks, they have your medical reports. If you had to reship this entire thing, you'd need new medical reports, you'd need new photographs, and you'd need new checks. So this just isn't as easy to reprint and send. Given our track record and history, our files average 3,000 to 4,000 pages, so it's not easy to reprint those files, ship them, have the client ship us medicals again, photographs again. All of that is pretty cumbersome, and the client ends up losing 6 weeks in the process.
And what does this apply to all forms? Only some forms? Like how can this be applied, and how could it potentially, be a real problem in terms of visa bullets and cutoffs that may be forthcoming?
Yeah, that's a great question, Sam. So I can talk about it from today's standpoint, what forms are in play. So today, if you're filing your EB-5 application concurrently, you are looking at Form G28, which is your attorney representation form, Form I-526E, which is the petition for immigrant investor, which is your EB-5 application, Form I-485, which is your green card application, Form 131, which is your travel application, I-765, which is your work permit application. You have 5 forms. In the last 48 hours, I-485 has been updated, and subsequently the following day, I-131 has been updated. Any of those versions being off could result in the entire packet being kicked back. Now, if you send the 526E and that version is correct, the government will process the 526E petition and kick back your entire adjustment of status packet. The whole thing will not come back. However, if your 526E is correct and your 485 is correct, but your 765, which is your work permit's outdated, then the 765 will be rejected. Again, going back to, you lose 6 to 8 weeks of time, and you do not get to retain the priority date because the government just lays the blame on your feet, the investor's feet, the attorney's feet. So it's just mainly loss of time that would be a problem. And if, say, the next bulletin, one of these categories retrogress, you lose the ability to concurrently file your application. That is a huge loss to clients that are filing that have children involved or that have experienced layoffs, because it does not give you the age lock protection. It does not give you the ability to stay in the US. It does not stop your 60-day clock after layoff. There are huge repercussions to this. I highly recommend investors as well as attorneys to stay on top of the versions, check every morning before shipping out your files, check the following day after shipping out your files, because we have no idea how this is going to play out.
And how do you even know if your application isn't going to get approved or accepted, and then be able to know that you need to correct it? Like how long would you have to wait to see before you knew you had a problem and then needed to refile? And then how would that work with filing fees too?
Yeah, Sam, that's a great question. And what I'll say is, unfortunately, what we have to do, if you file an application in 30 days, you can only reach out to the lockbox 30 days later and ask if there's an update on the file. Like I said, it takes 6 weeks for these things to come out. If you haven't seen your check cashed by week 3, you can assume there's a problem. If by week 3 your check isn't cashed, the first recommendation we give to our clients is call USCIS, provide your alien number, provide your full name, provide your date of birth, ask if there's a rejection notice on file. Because if there is a rejection notice on file, you know that your attorney is expecting the entire packet back to them. At that point, you have to make a decision whether you want to ship another one or you just want to wait for the packet to come back. So one of the ways you can find out is track those checks that are being cashed by USCIS, because once the check is cashed, you know that the file's been accepted. This is why, practice tip, we tell our clients not to use cashier's check, because you have no idea when a cashier's check is cashed. We recommend using personal checks. Another thing we don't recommend using currently is credit card authorizations, because the credit card companies are flagging those charges as fraud. And if it does get charged as fraud and the credit card company denies that charge, the petition comes back again. And again, the only way to find out is to call USCIS, say every week, and ask if there's a rejection notice on file.
Got it. Okay. So personal check, and then make sure you're working with a friendly bank that's going to be able to give you an update on the status of it being cashed or not.
Yes. Yeah. And a lot of the time, Sam, because of online banking, clients are just able to check their online records to see if USCIS has cashed the check or not.
Got it. Got it. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the other two main things, the Form I-485 and the Form-131. So what happened, and why did it happen, and what has kind of the impact been and will be for new investors?
Yeah, we woke up on March 3rd to see this update reflected on the 485 form page for USCIS. And this was a shocking update. So all of us went in to check if there had been any changes to the form. And outside of one question, which I believe they took out the option for, gender unknown, there were no other changes. The edition date at the bottom of the form had changed. This was shocking for the community because it is very rare or uncommon for USCIS to just switch the form version and say, okay, starting today, this is the form you're going to submit. What was not clarified was what happens to forms that are delivered on March 3rd, that were shipped on the 28th, 29th. We have no idea what happens. If the postmark rule was in play, we would have been able to tell our clients, yes, you're going to be okay because the FedEx label says February 28th or your USPS label says February 29th. For files that got delivered on March 3rd, 2025, we are currently waiting to see if USCIS will accept the old edition of the 485 form. So on the morning of March 3rd, for all the clients' files that were going out that day, we had to sit and redo Form 485, send it to the client for review, have the client sign it, and then because this change happened, we changed our policy of shipping. So instead of doing the 3-day shipping, we have now started to ship overnight using FedEx only with guaranteed delivery times, right? That's one of the best practice that has come out of this. The problem here is that if the government ends up accepting Form I-526E, that's the first form to be accepted and processed by the government. That takes about 2 to 3 weeks. 4 weeks after that, they start processing the 485, 131, and 765. If in 4 weeks, the policy that USCIS determines is accurate is, hey, we're going to reject it even though it came in on March 3rd, what's going to happen is these applications are going to require a refile, and you do not get to retain the priority date. So it is extremely, extremely important for all of us to monitor these dates. Another alternative approach is, there were 2 updates back to back You might as well just wait until next week to see if the next form to be updated is 526E, the form after that is G28, and the form after that is 765. Those are the only 3 forms that are pending updates now. It may be in the client's best interest to just wait to see if all those forms are updated going forward. And if you're going to ship, then I would have clients have 2 copies of your sealed medical reports, 2 sets of photographs, and 2 sets of checks with your attorney. If you're in a rush to file, if you have a child aging out, make sure that you have 2 sets of everything. It's a little bit of extra expense, but it saves you that 6 weeks of lost time.
And how would that work with 2 sets? You'd file 2 different times, and as long as one of them got cashed and went in, then you're okay?
Correct. And so you then have the ability to cancel another one, the other set of checks, right? And once it's canceled, you're good to go. So I think that that's the best play right now, is if we don't see updates to more forms in the next 3 days, we'll just tell clients to request 2 medical copies from their doctor, get 2 sets of photographs, get 2 sets of checks. And then I think the onus is on the client, because the attorney is not going to be on the call with USCIS because the G28 isn't registered. So at that point, the client's going to have to get on a call once every 5 days, call USCIS and see if their file has been accepted or rejected. One pro tip that I recommend, at least for the adjustment of status forms, is to include Form G1145, which gives a text message notification when the application is accepted. That text message notification is your indication that your version of the form was correct.
Got it. Okay. And then let's talk about the second form, the 131.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the same thing happened with 131. That was yesterday. So 485 was updated day before yesterday. 131 was updated yesterday. If I had to make a guess, we see 765 updated tomorrow, right? And so the same thing happened. Now that I had changed all the 485 forms for any applications that are going out today, I not only had to update 485, but I also had to update I-131. We shipped out 3 applications today. All of them were overnighted. They're going to get there tomorrow. If between now and tomorrow they change Form 765, then we're again back to the no man's land of we do not know if the government's going to accept that 765 that got there on March 6th, if this bulletin says March 6th. We've been hearing that AILA, which is American Immigration Lawyers Association, is trying to lobby the agency for a grace period or to keep following the postmark rule. We'll see if anything comes of it, and we're not going to get instant answers from there either. I know that ACLU, AILA are working hard to see if there's anything that can be done to prevent these delays.
So how could that potentially work if the 485 was accepted, but the I-131 wasn't? Would you then only get the adjustment, but not the combo card, or how? Like, what would the actual impact of that be?
That is correct, Sam. So if they accepted the 485 and say they reject the 131, in that case, you would then have to refile the I-131. But in order to refile the I-131, not in a packet with 485, what you need is your 526E receipt number and your 485 receipt number. Without the 485 receipt number, the government has no way to tie your I-131 to your concurrent filing. So again, you're losing more time. You have to wait for that receipt number. However, if you remember what I said, if you have the text message notification, that text message will give you the receipt number before the receipt even shows up at your doorstep. You then use that receipt number to populate your I-131 and then ship that application again.
Got it. Okay, so this is really why it's critical to make sure you're working with a high volume immigration law firm that is really on the front lines and making sure that these latest updates are being addressed. And if you happen to be right in that kind of window, this 2 or 3 days now where these form changes are happening, that someone is really on top of making sure the right forms are being used, or if something happened that no one could have prevented, that at least they're getting resubmitted, supplemented, and so we're not going to have any issues of a delayed priority date, essentially.
And then, Sam, these forms are easily accessible to the public. I say every investor every morning should be checking if the version that their attorney has provided to them and the version that they've signed matches with the version on the USCIS's website. That is a little bit of due diligence that the investors can do on their end.
Got it. All right. So I know, you're extremely busy. You're doing 5, 6, 7 files a week on average. Maybe spend 2 or 3 minutes and just share a little bit about your practice, how you work with clients, what technology platforms you've implemented to kind of streamline the process, and just kind of what allows you to do, 5, 6 files a week. Many attorneys are taking months to get these applications in. And how does that kind of compare to how your clients are getting serviced with your firm?
Yeah, Sam, thanks for having me on this webinar again. I think that we are a relatively young firm. We're a decade old, but we're also young attorneys. So we tend to rely heavily on technology. And what I mean by that is all the documents, for American source of funds or foreign source of funds usually pertain to tax returns and bank statements and W-2s or T4s or notice of assessments. All of those documents can easily be downloaded from your banking portal and uploaded to Dropbox. So we have integrated Dropbox into our daily practice, where we share Dropbox links with our client. We have segregated folders for adjustment of status, for filing copy, what is the exact file that's going to go to USCIS, offering documents, immigration form, source of funds documents. We provide a checklist to the investor that is posted on their individual Dropbox. And based on that checklist, the investor keeps uploading documents. A lot of our communication happens in real time over apps like WhatsApp or sometimes Slack or Teams. We tend to integrate that so we don't have to wait for the client to send us an email or the client doesn't have to wait for us to respond to an email. So a lot of this is happening in real time. We're also a 24-hour shop. At any point in time, our shop is functioning. We have lawyers that work different time zones. We have lawyers that work from midnight to 7 a.m., 8 a.m. So at any point in time, we're always processing times. And we understand that our clients have jobs. EB-5 is not their job. So we tend to be available post business hours, which is post 5 p.m. PST, which gives a lot of time to people on the East Coast, but even people on the West Coast that are in the tech sector are then able to communicate with us. I have calls with clients at 10 p.m., 11 p.m., sometimes at 6 a.m. I think that's the recipe to success, is that there's no lag in communication. It helps us churn out files in less than 3 days sometimes. I think our record has been 3 days when Microsoft recently experienced layoffs, and we were able to get applications done in 3 to 4 days. And I think a lot of this goes to our clients. We set that expectation. Our clients usually meet our expectation in getting us the documents quickly, because keep in mind, we can't do anything if the client doesn't provide us data. Most of our clients are on top of the game. They're prepared. They give us documents as requested, and we are extremely quick in getting these done. And we're enjoying while doing this. So yeah, it's fun.
What would you say in terms of clients who are considering EB-5? As they're starting to think about EB-5 and maybe reach out to you or another 1 or 2 attorneys, like what's some of that kind of pre-work that they can be doing to try to minimize the amount of time from when they hire you to when you're able to actually file their application? Like what does that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the pre-work that they could do is what we ask our clients to do is, hey, give me a brief summary of where your money is going to come from. And that could just be as short as 6 sentences. I'm going to get $250,000 from HELOC. The home was purchased in February 2014. I'm going to get $400,000 from liquidation of RSUs. I work for Palo Alto Networks. I'm going to get a $50,000 loan from Wells Fargo. It's an unsecured loan, right? And I'm going to use $150,000 from my savings account. And I have a Bank of America account where I get my salary, and I moved all that money to my Amex high yield savings account. What that does is it gives us enough information to create a customized checklist. There is no one size fit all checklist for all the clients, but when we have that information, during that call, we're now able to generate like a random list for the client that'll say, a comprehensive list that'll say, we're gonna need, 7 years of your bank statements, 4 years of your brokerage account statements in quarterly format, 7 years of your W-2, 7 years of your tax returns. It really helps the attorney see your source of funds, and it helps you after the call to, just gather all the documents together. We get a lot of consults that'll say, I'm not sure how I'm gonna do this, or they come with a fixed mindset that we're gonna use this money. sometimes that source, as clean as it is very cumbersome. It could result in a 7,000 page file. I think it's also important to come to your lawyer with alternatives. Hey, I have these options available for source of funds. Tell me which is going to be the shortest and the quickest way to do this. That really helps us, because the shorter the file, the quicker it can get out. If you have the option to take a margin loan against your RSUs, and that RSU account has no cash from elsewhere, that's amazing. That's the option we want to use. If you have a home equity line of credit that can go up to $900,000, that's amazing. That's sourced from one asset. We use that. You can use all the high yield savings cash you have to pay down that loan. If the government ever questions that in the future, that's also going to be legitimate. So give a breakdown of your source of funds, simplistic breakdown, and also come up with alternative options as to what other options can you use to speed up the process.
Got it. Okay, great. And for investors, who are considering doing EB-5, what's the best, most efficient way to get in touch with you so you can arrange a time to chat with them and just see if their proposed source of funds is going to work and whether they're going to be able to qualify to adjust status?
Yeah. So Sam, the news for Gold Card has created a massive rush in EB-5, and so what we're telling prospective clients that are coming to us is, if you're mentally prepared to file in the next 30 days, go ahead and schedule the appointment. Because if your plan is to do something 6-8 months down the line, now's not the time to have that conversation. Let's be very clear. Everyone who files now or up until the point the EB-5 program is revoked is going to be protected. What do I mean by that? There's a grandfathering provision in the Reform and Integrity Act, which states that anyone who's filed before the program collapses is safe. So if you were to file your EB-5 application and say Gold Card, Congress kicks in Gold Card in 6 weeks, if you've already filed and Congress kills the EB-5 program, it does not impact everyone who's filed the application. Understand that all lawyers are swamped with this now. So if you're someone who's 6 to 8 months out, I think you are in your position is to wait and watch to see what happens to the program. And if you have the liquidity to do this in, say, 30, 45 days, I think then you reach out to the lawyer. For us, the best way is to reach out to us through our website, through our scheduling link, or through WhatsApp. And we will get back to you based on the input data that you fill out. If you say you're 6 months out, we may tell you to come back in 3 or 4 months when we have more clarity. If you're like, we're 30 days out and this is our source, we're more likely to pick up and run with it, right? So it's extremely important to understand your timelines, temper your expectations, and also plan for delays on the agency's side in case of changes in forms.
Perfect. All right. Anything else you want to add, Anita, before we wrap up?
No, I think that everyone's very curious about Gold Card, and what I will say that Congress needs to make the law, the Gold Card law, and Congress needs to cancel the EB-5 provision if that's what they intend. An executive order is not going to cancel EB-5. So for all of you who are thinking or on the fence or looking for clarity for the Gold Card program, the time is now to file the application if you have the funds available, not to wait for Congress to say something, because when Congress does say something, it may just be the end of the program.
And on that point, one last thing, let's just talk about partial filings quickly and how investors can kind of take advantage of that to, lock in before any, nearer term changes could happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Sam, we have to be very careful with partial filings under the Trump administration, because again, in the past, we've seen that they've said, hey, you weren't approvable when filed, which is a case law, and so we're going to deny this application. So what we want the investors to do is carefully plan in the process of investing source. And what I mean by that is, if you have $500K in cash and $300K is coming from a HELOC, you do not need to wait 45 days for those HELOC to be funded, right? Just a simple pre-approval with a disbursement date is enough to show that you're in the process of investing. It's going to take the bank 45 days. You have examples of fixed deposits that are non-revocable, right? That cannot be called for early on. In that case, it's very easy to show documentation. My fixed deposit is going to mature on April 1st, 2025. I'm making this investment today. I'll make the rest of the investment on April 1st. You do not need to wait until April 1st to make that happen. Similarly, if you have stocks in your blackout period, you want to make sure that you have enough margin on the stocks. You want to make sure that if the stock was to crash by 20 to 30%, you weren't going to run out of money or you weren't going to be short for the EB5 investment. If you're in the blackout period and you can prove that you're in the blackout period and you have an order placed for sale once the blackout period ends, that is definitely one way to do your source of funds, right? To say partial filing, I have 400K in hand, I'm going to sell 400K worth of RSUs, I'm in blackout periods because of earnings, I'll be able to sell on, say, April 15th. That is also an acceptable answer, as long as you have like $100,000, $200,000 buffer in case the market crashes further.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. All right, perfect. Thank you very much, Anita, for taking some time. And yeah, for investors considering making an investment, Anita is a topic expert in this and is very highly regarded in the field. And many of our clients have nothing but positive things to say about her work and experience. So we, she has our strongest recommendation. So thank you again for taking time to join us on this pressing topic.
Yeah, thank you.